All right, more SEC quarterback talk today. The SEC West. I did a video on the quarterback situations for every SEC East team a few days ago. So if you haven't seen that yet and you're interested, you can scroll back a few videos and find it. And I'm almost at 50,000 subscribers too. By the way, I'm doing a 24-hour. I don't know why I agreed to do this. I'm doing a 24-hour live stream when I hit 50,000 subscribers, and I'm about 150 away. So. Pick one of your favorite Uncle Lou videos and go share it somewhere. Help me get to 50,000. Anyway, SEC West up today. And we'll start with sort of the easy ones where there's no real questions or concerns, honestly. And, of course, Alabama would be on the top of that list. Returning starter at quarterback, Bryce Young, last year's Heisman Trophy winner and runner-up in the national title game. The starting quarterback for Alabama, Bryce Young, had a great year last year, had some amazing wide receivers. Obviously, that helps. Wide receiver was a concern for Alabama heading into this season, right? A lot of young guys that didn't look well or didn't look that good, really, when they came in last year in place of some of the injured receivers that Bama had. They go to the transfer portal. They bring in Jermaine Burton from Georgia. Big deal. Look, I didn't want to lose Jermaine Burton. He was Georgia's leading wide receiver last year. I don't blame Jermaine Burton for making the switch. Clearly, Alabama runs an offense that's much more favorable towards wide receivers than Georgia does. So I think that's a big addition there for Alabama. Bryce Young will be fine in terms of his quarterback play. Now, how much Bama's offensive line affects Bryce Young this year, we'll have to wait and see. I do have some serious questions about Alabama's offensive line. I think offensive line is the weakest position group on Alabama's team. Now, that doesn't mean they're terrible. We all know how Alabama is recruited. The talent is there. But the offensive line let Alabama down multiple times last year. And at least right now, the offensive line looks even more shaky than it did last year. They didn't play well in the spring game. And if you go back and watch any of the games last year where Bryce Young struggled, it's a direct result of poor offensive line play. The Auburn game, he was running for his life. I think he got sacked 8 times in that game, right? And Alabama never scored a touchdown until the last drive of the fourth quarter. National championship game, same thing. Bryce Young was running for his life the majority of that game. Those were probably his 2 worst games. So that's the key to sort of slowing Bryce Young down. If Bryce Young doesn't repeat... Well, could Bryce Young repeat as Heisman winner, which hasn't been done since Archie Griffin from Ohio State? It's going to be hard for Bryce Young to repeat, and here's why. It's not a knock on Bryce Young. Bryce Young is going to be every bit as good this year as he was last year. He's not going to somehow get worse in his second year as a starter, right? Offensive line could be an issue in Bryce Young winning the Heisman. Not having the caliber of wide receivers that he had last year could be an issue when it comes to Bryce Young repeating as Heisman. Alabama fatigue could be an issue when it comes to Bryce Young winning the Heisman. An Alabama player has won the Heisman 3 years in a row. Is that right? Is that right? I think it is. I think it is, or it would be 3 years in a row, I guess, if they win it. If they win it this year, is that right? Anyway, and Will Anderson. Will Anderson is probably the best player in all of college football. I do believe, if I had to make a prediction right now, I would predict that Will Anderson is in New York for the Heisman ceremony. So you have to wonder, is having 2 Heisman favorites on the same team going to hurt both of their chances of winning the Heisman? In other words, is Will Anderson going to take some votes away from Bryce Young? And is Bryce Young going to take some votes away from Will Anderson? But look, when you talk about a team's quarterback and the biggest concern is whether or not they're going to repeat as Heisman, that tells you you're in pretty good shape at the quarterback position. Clearly, Bryce Young is one of the best 2 or 3 quarterbacks in all of college football, period. Arkansas returns KJ Jefferson, so no quarterback battles there. KJ Jefferson reminds me of Cam Newton. Not that he's as good in college as Cam Newton was at Auburn while he was in college. I just mean when you look at KJ Jefferson, he's a big guy. He likes to run. He likes contact. He doesn't look to run out of bounds or slide very often. I don't think he's as good of a thrower as Cam Newton, but he can sling the ball. Now, having Burks last year on the outside really helped him, a big, tall, wide receiver that can jump out of the gym and catch anything you throw anywhere near him. He's gone. If you have any concerns about KJ Jefferson this year, it's the fact that he lost his favorite wide receiver. Burks had 3 times as much production last year as the number 2 wide receiver did. Now, they bring in Jaden Hazelwood from Oklahoma, who was a 5-star recruit from the state of Georgia out of high school that's played at Oklahoma for a couple of years. Lincoln Riley left. He decided to transfer out. He's at Arkansas. So the plan for KJ Jefferson in Arkansas is for Hazelwood to be the replacement for Burks. Can he put up similar numbers? We'll see. But KJ Jefferson's a good, solid quarterback. We all know sort of the great story that has been the Arkansas Razorbacks over the last couple of years, picking themselves up from really the depths of college football hell to really becoming a respectable program under Sam Pittman in a very short period of time. I don't expect them to compete necessarily to win the SEC West, but I think they'll be a tough out for almost everybody they play this year. KJ Jefferson, quarterback, a big reason why. Mississippi State, Will Rogers, maybe the most productive quarterback in the SEC this coming season. Of course, he plays in that Mike Leach offense out there in Starkville. And, any decent QB is going to put up ridiculous numbers in that offense. He did last year. He'll do it again this year. Of the teams we've talked about so far, Alabama, Arkansas, and Mississippi State, I think Mississippi State is probably the worst overall team of those 3. Not that they're terrible. Didn't they win 8 games last year or something? So not terrible considering they play in one of the toughest divisions in football. I would be surprised if Mississippi State won more than 8 games this year, and it won't be because of Will Rogers, not specifically anyway. I just think the talent around him is not what it is at places like Alabama and Arkansas. Now on to the 4 teams that do have legitimate quarterback questions heading into next season, and we'll start with our buddy Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. Of course, Matt Corral gone off to the NFL. He was he might have been the most entertaining player to watch in all of college football last year. I loved watching Matt Corral play. I probably watched 6 or 7 Ole Miss games last year. It seems like Matt Corral got hurt in every one of them. Not injured, but hurt. The guy was constantly limping around, constantly taking hits, constantly taking off running and being tackled and thrown to the ground and would get up, slow to get up. But he always came back in. He might have missed a play or 2 to get an ankle retaped or something, but he was one of the toughest college football players we've seen in a while, in my opinion. I'm going to miss watching him this year. When he did go out last year and they had to put someone else in, it was Luke Altmaier. He returns this year, so that's a possibility. Lane Kiffin obviously was not 100% sold on Altmaier as being this year's starter because he goes to the transfer portal and brings in Jackson Dart from Southern Cal. There was a lot of dominoes that fell when Lincoln Riley transferred from Oklahoma to Southern Cal, right? Caleb Williams left Oklahoma, goes to Southern Cal. Both Southern Cal quarterbacks left. Keaton Slovis left for Pitt. Jackson Dart left for Ole Miss. If I had to put money on it now, I would put money on Jackson Dart starting week 1 at Ole Miss. Maybe we see a situation where both quarterbacks play early in the season and they sort of, fight it out on the field in the first couple of weeks to see who can become the permanent starter for the majority of the season. My money right now, though, would be on Jackson Dart. I do think he has a higher upside than Luke Altmaier. Now, one clear advantage that Luke Altmaier is going to have over Jackson Dart is that he's been in that system for a year already, whereas Jackson Dart is having to come in and learn everything from scratch. Luke Altmaier has a year under his belt. So he'll be more comfortable with the system, at least early on. My money would still be on Jackson Dart to get the start, though. Auburn. Auburn might have the worst quarterback situation in the SEC this year. Well, Vandy's probably on that list, too. Auburn is a complete and total mess. It's not just the quarterbacks. Everything about Auburn right now is a mess. The alumni, the boosters, and several of last year's players can't stand the head coach, Brian Harsin. They want him gone. I don't see how Brian Harsin is functioning there. It seems like a hostile work environment. I feel bad for – look, whenever Auburn loses their first game, whenever that is this season, they're going to rain down on him something serious. And it's just going to start to domino the more games Auburn loses. And unfortunately, if you're an Auburn fan, I think you're going to lose a lot of games this year. One of the reasons why is this jackleg quarterback situation you got. TJ Finley, he was there last year. He did play some too. You know, Bo Nix started at Auburn for 3 years straight, but Bo Nix got hurt last year. Everybody remembers last year's Iron Bowl, right? I think I talked a little bit about it when I talked about Bryce Young earlier in this video. Bo Nix did not play in the Iron Bowl. That was TJ Finley. And, you know, Auburn's defense played great, shut Alabama's offense down for 59 minutes of that game, and then gave up a 99-yard touchdown drive in the last minute that tied things up, sent it to overtime. Alabama ended up winning. TJ Finley was the one that played in that game, and he was not good either. You know, Auburn's defense pretty much shut Alabama out for 4 quarters, but unfortunately, Auburn's offense just couldn't do anything. And TJ Finley was a big reason why. He did not look good in that game. I have not been sold on him really ever, and I'm not sold on him now. I believe he transferred from LSU, so he sort of flamed out at LSU, transferred to Auburn, rode the bench behind Bo Nix. I don't think it's a given that TJ Finley is going to be handed the starting job this year. They bring Zach Calzada in from Texas A&M, everybody's favorite Italian hot pocket from last year. He started the season last year as a backup as well, just like TJ Finley. But, of course, Texas A&M quarterback Haynes King went down in week 2, I believe it was, on the road at Colorado. Zach Calzada came in, started the rest of the season, and beat Alabama. And if the only game you ever watched Zach Calzada play was that game last year for Texas A&M against Alabama, you'd think he was a hell of a quarterback because he played by far his best game of the season against Alabama in that win against the Gumps at College Station. I feel like he has a low ceiling, though. He may be the best on the team. They got this young kid, Robbie Ashford. Actually, Robbie Ashford probably has the highest ceiling of those 3 quarterbacks, but he's young. I would be absolutely shocked in a year where I think Brian Harsin's job is on the line. I'd be shocked if he went with somebody with no experience, and that would be Robbie Ashford. Now, down the road, he's probably going to be a better quarterback than either of those other 2. But I would be surprised if he's given the start, considering what's on the line this year for Brian Harsin and his job at Auburn. So it's going to come down to TJ Finley and Zach Calzada. I would probably go with Calzada, but I'm not Brian Harsin. We'll see what he does. Again, it's a situation where Finley has a year in the system already. Zach Calzada's having to learn it from scratch. We'll see what happens. LSU, another mess at the quarterback situation. Miles Brennan, who's been at LSU since 1972, he's as old as Stetson Bennett. That's how long he's been in college. He's a six-year senior. He's there. He's an option. Senior Jaden Daniels, who transferred in from Arizona State. Arizona State's been disappointing the last 2 years. Jaden Daniels was supposed to be really, really good. Never really lived up to the hype out there at Arizona State under Herm Edwards. Decided to transfer out for he's a senior as well, so, you know, his last year, so he's going to be fighting for the starting job. And then you got 2 young kids. You got the Nussmeier kid. I've drawn a blank on his first name. Nussmeier. He's probably more talented than those other 2 we just talked about. I don't know if he'll, you know, how much opportunity he's getting or how much opportunity he got with the ones in spring, how much he'll get in fall camp, where exactly he falls on the depth chart. Brian Kelly's been pretty tight-lipped about this stuff. And then freshman Walker Howard. And if you don't know who Walker Howard is, you remember, I guess this was pretty much right after Brian Kelly had got hired, or a month or 2 after, maybe, a January, February time frame. LSU was releasing these weird recruiting videos where recruits were coming to LSU in this room with black lights and flashing LSU logos, and Brian Kelly would be on this spinning pedestal dancing and dry humping a recruit. Well, the one video like that went viral was the one with Walker Howard. He's probably the best quarterback on this roster long term. If I was Brian Kelly, it's your first year. Your first year somewhere is kind of a mulligan year. Now, I know LSU fans are tired of winning 5 and 6 games a year like they have the last couple of years, and they want to win now. If I'm Brian Kelly, I might decide to just go ahead and play Walker Howard. Let him get a year under his belt, and then next year, try to make next year the year, maybe that you make a run. I don't see LSU competing to win the West this year. I just, first-year head coach Brian Kelly and a complete mess here at the quarterback situation. Miles Brennan is not very good. Jaden Daniels falls in that same category. Nussmeier never really taking a meaningful snap, and Walker Howard, a true freshman. I don't know which way Brian Kelly's going to go. LSU is very talented. You look at LSU's roster in the recruiting rankings, they're at worst the fourth most talented team in the SEC. You know, maybe they're behind Georgia, Bama, and Texas A&M in terms of overall roster talent, but they're extremely talented. But you got to get the quarterback situation figured out. We'll see which way they decide to go. Speaking of Texas A&M, another mess at the quarterback situation. I mentioned Haynes King earlier, who got the start last year before getting hurt, which ended his season in week 2. He's back. Probably the front runner. I mean, clearly Jimbo Fisher likes him and thinks he can run the offense because he chose Haynes King last year to start over Zach Calzada, who, of course, now is transferred out. So you got a healthy Haynes King. He's back. They bring in Max Johnson from LSU, who has a ton of experience. Is that Mark Richt's nephew? I think, is that the one? LSU had a quarterback that was Mark Richt's nephew. I think it is Max Johnson. It's Mark Richt. Oh, my old buddy Mark Richt. Yeah, Max Johnson. So you bring him in. He's got the most experience, right? Haynes King only has, 2 starts and only played 1.5 games before he was hurt. Max Johnson's got the most experience. And then a freshman, Connor Weigman. Again, this seems like a theme with some of these Auburn, LSU, and Texas A&M. I think the best quarterbacks on those teams are true freshmen. But it is very dangerous to start a true freshman quarterback in the SEC. You can ruin a kid mentally by throwing him into the fire as a true freshman. But Connor Weigman definitely has the best arm of any of the quarterbacks on that team. And Jimbo Fisher is notoriously hard on quarterbacks. Notoriously hard on QBs. He expects a lot out of his quarterback, both physically in terms of production and on-field performance, but up here too. And, one of the biggest transitions a kid has to make from high school to college is what goes on up here. In high school, you're able to out-talent a lot of people, especially if you're on a loaded team in high school. If you're a really good quarterback and you have a really good wide receiver, there's not much a high school defense is going to do to stop that. Not necessarily the case in college. Everyone is talented. Everyone has good wide receivers and DBs. Everyone's got good pass rushers. You really have to have it together up here in terms of reading coverages, blocking assignments, knowing where the blitz is coming from, making checks at the line. That can be the hardest thing for a freshman to pick up. But Connor Weigman, in my opinion, is the future at quarterback for Texas A&M. The only question for Jimbo Fisher is, how far away is that future? Is it at some point this year? I doubt it. Maybe we see him in the second halves of some games. If Texas A&M gets up to some big leads over some teams or something. I find it hard to believe that a coach with as much experience as Jimbo Fisher would throw Connor Weigman in his true freshman year. Anyway, I'm not going to rank these. Clearly, Bryce Young is the best returning quarterback in the SEC West and all of the SEC for that matter. I mean, he's the reigning Heisman winner. There's no argument or debate. Will Rogers may have the best overall numbers. A lot of that is going to be due to the offense he plays in under Lane Kiffin. And KJ Jefferson might be the most fun to watch this year. Last year, I think it was Matt Corral. Loved watching Matt Corral. KJ Jefferson might be the funnest quarterback to watch this year. He loves to hit people. Don't we love it when a quarterback takes off running and trucks somebody? Why do we all love that so much? We're so used to seeing the quarterback slide or run out of bounds. I guess that's what it is. But KJ Jefferson's a big old dude. Like I said, if you didn't watch any Arkansas games last year, while you're here, I'm about to end this video. Just type in KJ Jefferson Arkansas highlights or something and just watch. Just tell me if it doesn't remind you a little bit of Cam Newton. Anyway, 2022 SEC West quarterback situations. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Have a good morning.